I remember Kaiser in 1948. I came to Kaiser about 2 months after my February 15th, 1948 arrival in the United States. I was a GI war bride, born in England and married to an American soldier in 1945. My husband had lived in Salem, Oregon before joining the Army. He liked the town and thought we could enjoy a good life here. So after an extremely rough 15-day passage across the Atlantic Ocean, we docked in New York Harbor the day after Valentine's Day, 1948. From there we came across the United States by train, through Chicago on the Portland Rose train to Portland, and on to Salem on 99E, riding a Greyhound bus. In those days, Highway 99E was the most direct route between the two towns, passing through very small places like Canby, Hubbard, and Woodburn. It was a slow journey. There was no freeway until the 1950s. The rain bothered me a lot when I came here. Though England is known for its rain and cold winds, it seems to be heavier here. It also seemed to snow more the first few winters than it does now. England was still rationed when I left in 1948 for food, clothes, furniture, household goods, and linnets. Then I came to Salem, where grocery shops were jammed with goods, and nobody had to line up for hours, hoping that they wouldn't sell out before you reached the head of the line, as we had done back in our country. In those days, we walked into Salem on River Road, past large houses and fields, no Fred Meyers, no gas company, no churches. A group of small houses was being built for veterans at Tryon Avenue. On the east side of Cherry Avenue, lots were being sold, and returning veterans were building their own homes. Cherry Avenue was a gravel road, often flooded and foggy in the winter. You could hear the frogs croaking as you drove by, and there was an aluminum plant on the east side. In 1949 or 50, I went to work for Arnold Peterson at the Cupboard Drive-In near Kaiser Corners, the original type of drive-in where you took the order and then went out with a tray and hooked it to the driver's door. It was a 2-story building where the family lived upstairs. A few years later, it burned, and when rebuilt was only 1 story, and I think no longer a restaurant. Directly across the street was a dress shop run by a lady named Goldie. One evening while working, I looked over there, and I could see flames through the windows. Someone called the fire department. The building was saved, but not much of the stock. An iron had been left on and was still on the ironing board and had burned through it. Ray and Louise Boucher opened a jewelry shop in the early 50s that is still in business today, run by their sons. Also across the street was Olin Brown's Feed and Seed store. Further south was the Frozen Food Lockers building, where you could rent a locker to store personal frozen foods. It was quite usual to buy half a beef and store it there. Home freezers were not so common as they are now. In later years, Elmer Berg had a large grocery store on River Road across from Cummings Lane. In the area of the current do-it-yourself car wash, there was a popular small ice cream shop. Across the street was a glass shop, but there were no pubs. England is full of pubs, places where people got together to relax and visit. They often had gardens to sit in and places for children to play. In Salem, it was only cafes, restaurants, or taverns. In nice restaurants, if customers want an alcoholic drink, they had to take their own bottle. The bartender poured and charged for service and mix. Liquor by the drink did not come to Salem until 1954. Kaiser has its own parade almost every year since I have lived here, and my children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren have often been in it. I, too, used to drive my red convertible in the parade, often representing the American Legion. My son was still a preschooler when he walked in the parade with his cat in his little red wagon. All 3 of my daughters Two of them, once disguised as a cow, took part in the fun. In 1948, the Willamette River flooded, reaching many of the little houses on Delight Street. The water never reached our house on Churchdale Avenue, but at that time the whole town of Vanport near Portland was wiped out. Soon they built Detroit Dam, and the floods that have occurred since have not been so disastrous. In 1996, I was visiting my family in England and had to change the date of my return due to a death in the family. Had I come home on the original date, I would not have been able to go to my house because of the river overflowing. Though the water never reached our home, homes on my street had been evacuated as the water did come a short distance up the street. Another flood in 1964 destroyed houses in Palmacia, right on the riverbanks. The Columbus Day storm in 1962 caused lots of damage in the area, loss of many trees, 2 in my garden, and more than a week without power, a cold house, and difficult cooking. Otherwise, living in Kaiser has been very peaceful, at least on Sunset Avenue.
Hello, welcome to the Kaiser Oral History Project. I'm Anita Zanizer, and I have the pleasure of being with Joy Beebe this afternoon in her lovely home on Sunset Avenue in Kaiser. Joy is a British war bride and has written a book about her experiences meeting her husband, Carl, during the war. And what we are going to share with you today is a love story that crossed the Atlantic numerous times, but ended up when Carl and Joy built their home and settled in Kaiser, in this home in 1957. So that makes it how long that you've been here?
Well, it'll be 59 years.
59
in September.
Years. And so a lovely home. We're sitting in her sunroom. You arrived, though, prior to 57 to Salem, right? You came when Philip was 2 years old, was it?
That's right. We came from England to New York, and then traveled by train to Portland, and then down to Salem. We stayed with my brother-in-law for a while, and then we stayed in a motel for about a month before we found a house in Kaiser. And we lived in a house on Churchdale for a while, and then we were going to build a house on Delight Street, but that didn't work out, so we found another one on Chemawa Road. In fact, we moved around to several different places until 1957, so that was about 8 or 9 years that we moved around in rental houses. Then the Oregon government gave the veterans a bonus, and we took the bonus and built and bought a house on Bailey Road. Well, the Bailey Road house got a little small, and after we'd lived there several years, we looked around for something a little bit bigger, and we bought this one. And since we've been here, why, we have extended it and made it comfortable for us and 4 children.
So 3 more children had arrived by the time you moved to this home?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
And your children are Philip and
Jennifer, Barbara Ann, and Vivian.
Okay, and where are they and what are they doing now?
Well, Philip lives in Alameda, California. He's retired after 22 years in the Navy, and after he got out of the Navy, he went to college. He said the Navy promised him college when he joined up, and so he was going to get it. So he got it 22 years later, and he works with he got his bachelor's degree and his master's degree, and he works with the Salvation Army in San Francisco. He is retired now, but they keep calling him back, so I guess he did a pretty good job.
Not a good job retiring. It's kind of like you keep getting called back, right?
That's right. Jennifer, she worked for the state for a long time. She did work for a while, for several years, in a restaurant, and but then when we retired from the restaurant, why she went to work for the state, and she stayed there until she recently retired. And now she looks after a couple of her grandchildren and still lives in Kaiser.
Okay.
Barbara has worked for the state for over 30 years and retired a few years ago. And she now works for a group called the Spirit of 45, which is honoring the veterans of World War II. And she travels quite a lot with it and does a lot of work trying to get donations, trying to find different groups to help make good efforts on the day to entertain people about and tell them about the war. We made the day August the 14th was the end. August the 14th, 1945, was the end of World War II, mm-hmm. And so August the 14th is the day that we celebrate the Spirit of 45. We were the third state to make a Memorial Day of it, but we were the first state to make it a Memorial Day for every year, whereas the other two states made it just for 1 year. Now it has spread pretty much all over the country and in Hawaii, and we have connections in England, and we have connections in France and the area of the D-Day invasion. And Barbara travels a lot with that. She's been to France a couple of times to work with the people there. She's been to Cambridge in England because there's a big group there for the Spirit of 45. And then she maintains our own Oregon Spirit of 45. Since she retired, she certainly does.
And how appropriate that the daughter of an American GI and a British war bride should be spending all this effort that we wouldn't forget.
Yes.
Because
yes.
people need to be educated, and we need not to forget. If it hadn't been for that war, you probably wouldn't be here today, would you?
I would never have had any idea of coming to America.
Yeah.
I didn't have any travel bug at all in those days, but crossing the Atlantic the first time, even though it was very rough, got me going on traveling and doing things in other countries.
And your fourth child?
That's Vivian, and she's old enough to retire, but says she likes her job so well she's going to stay with it. She is a pharmacy manager in 2 small towns in Washington State. She lives in Sequim, Washington, and she also works in Port Angeles at the Walgreens store there. But she says she likes helping people. She likes working. They are pretty much retirement towns, and she likes working with the people and helping them understand, you know, what age is doing to them. And so she says she just doesn't want to retire for a long time yet.
Well, no need to. That's great. And then you have how many grandchildren?
I have 4 grandchildren.
And great-grandchildren?
10. Yes.
It's a big family.
Yes.
And going back to the early years when you had first arrived, not everything was easy, I'm sure, being homesick and experiencing culture shock. Would you speak about culture shock a little bit and how the Accent Club helped with that?
Well, it was hard to understand things. Of course, it's different money. And you may say that both England and America speak English, but there is a big difference. There's a lot of words that I got laughed at when I spoke them, but then on the other hand, it went both ways, that America used some words that we thought were not quite appropriate. So the English language was not just straight across English. The shops were so full of goods, and the traffic was so much more, so many cars on the road, where we hardly had any cars on our roads.
Not only that, but they were driving on the wrong side, weren't they?
Well, that's true, but I never drove in England, so that didn't bother me. Didn't bother me near as much as the money thing did, because your money was dollars, and it took, when I first came here, it took about $5 to the pound. But every time I parted with a dollar bill, I would think I was parting with a pound, because that was our smallest bill, was a pound. And it just bothered me. Everything seemed so expensive here, but of course it wasn't. And of course things were much more available.
How long did it take before you could go back home? How long were you here before your first visit with family?
20 years to the day.
Oh, okay.
I decided I wanted to go, and I figured I got reservations to go so that I would be there 20 years from the day that I left.
Meanwhile, you had helped to form a War Brides Club. Were you instrumental in founding that?
Well, I was asked to the very first meeting, which I came here in February of '48, and I think it was March by the time I reached Oregon. But several of these ladies at this time were already having coffee together or cups of tea, and so I was asked to join them. So I am in this picture, which was taken in 1948, where we were hosted by these ladies here are Americans. They are Oregonians, and they hosted all the rest of us. And we met about once a month at first, or for years and years we met once a month. And then as we got older and our kids got older, and there were things to do in the evening, like going to the school to see things that they wanted to show us at school and everything, we kind of cut down on it a little bit. Some of these ladies went home, some of them moved to other states, and so we just, although a lot of the people in this picture stayed with the club, even though in the end we got down to meeting twice a year. The last 6 or 7 years we've met twice a year, and we always come here and sit in this room and have tea together and little sandwiches.
Like in this picture.
Yes.
Right.
This This is the last picture that was taken last year, and already several of those have already left us, and there's only about 4 of us now.
In Kaiser?
No,
How many in Kaiser are there?
there's just 2 of us in Kaiser.
Okay.
Yeah. All these ladies, a lot of these ladies came from Salem. A couple of them came from Sublimity, and but mostly they were from Salem. And then we had other kinds of parties. This was in 2003. We even had Santa Claus come and see us.
Is that here?
That's in this room, yes.
In this room, okay. Well, great. And it's Father Christmas in England, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it in this room?
And that was a great encouragement, wasn't it? Did you ever have relationships in between your meeting times with
yes,
individuals
some of
then?
them got together. I mean, this lady here, Olive, she just recently died. She and I, when our children were little, we would take turns in fixing Sunday dinner. Then one week they'd come here, and the next week we'd go there. Yeah, but and some of them we were great friends with. Some of these girls were not, they weren't from England, all from England. This one was from Ireland, this one was from Scotland, this one was from Samoa, this one was from Scotland. I can't remember, I think she was German. And so we had a lot of nationalities, Czechoslovakian and French, and but we all enjoyed each other, and we all stuck together.
And you were all war brides, is
we
what
were
you
all
had in
war
common.
brides, yes.
Right.
A war bride had to be married during the war years up until, I think, they cut him off about 1947. The war ended in 45, and I think they gave 2 more years to people to come because the government paid our way over here.
On a lovely Liberty ship.
Yes, on a ship that just wasn't very safe.
Yeah.
I'm afraid it had a lot of trouble on the ocean. And then when we got to New York, we were too late because to get into the harbor, you have to have a pilot. And the pilot goes home at 4 o'clock. And,
Oh, dear.
And so we...
One more night.
We had to stay one more night
Yeah.
out in there. But when we came past the Statue of Liberty on the ship, why, there was everybody that was on the ship was up on the deck, yelling and shouting, being
That's
happy
wonderful.
about arriving in New York.
Now, Joy, in your neighborhood here, were the neighbors friendly? Was there a lot of interaction among neighbors on this street?
There was some. Right now, I think I am the one that has lived here the longest. But there were 2 or 3 people that have recently passed away that had been here longer than I. They were friendly, but I think it was a little bit me. I had lived in rented houses where there were other renters around, and everybody wanted to get together for coffee. Once your husband went to work and your kids were in school, they wanted to get to coffee in the morning. And then it turned out that you didn't have time to get things ready before your husband got home. So when I came here, I decided that I had to look after the house first and the kids. And still one child didn't go to school when we got here. She was only 4.
Okay.
So.
Which schools did your children go to?
Philip went to Kaiser School, and I think Jennifer did for 1 year. And then the 2 younger ones only went to Cummings School. Philip went from Kaiser to Parish to North Salem High. He graduated from there. Jennifer went to several different schools. She started at Kaiser, and she went to Cummings for a while. Then she went to West Salem for junior high, and I think she also went to Whitaker.
Is McNary?
No, Whitaker.
Whitaker?
Where is Whitaker?
On Lock Haven, I think.
No, she didn't go there. She went to one on off of Silverton Road.
Well, you've lost me, but
Anyway,
did any of them go to McNary?
Well, then she was in the first year that McNary started.
Okay.
Yeah, Jennifer was in the first class at McNary. In fact, Jennifer has just done a lot of work getting everything ready for the 50th anniversary that they had a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
Yeah, she spent a lot of time tracing everybody and getting everybody's history.
Well, that's an important one, the 50th, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So then the other two went, they didn't go to different middle schools because it was just straight. By the time they got through Cummings, then they could go to McNary. No,
Okay.
They
They went to middle school, but
yeah.
okay. How would you evaluate the education that your children received here in Kaiser?
Oh, I think they did very well. I think the Kaiser school. I think the Kaiser schools have been very good. I have one grandson who went to all Kaiser schools, and he is a math whiz, and he has a big job in London. He's got a very, very good job in London, England, and so he took his wife and family over there, and strangely enough, they are living close to where I grew up.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So
Do they love it there?
Oh, they do, yes.
Yeah.
My little 5-year-old granddaughter speaks with a very pronounced English accent.
Well, that's wonderful. The full circle, right?
Yes.
And then you volunteered at Cummings School too, didn't you? How did that come about, and what did you do there?
Oh, well, mostly it was helping them read, helping the slow ones read, you know.
Like first grade?
Yes,
Okay.
and kindergarten. I don't know if they still have kindergarten because it's only been first grade the last couple of years.
But they probably just needed that extra measure of encouragement and help, one-on-one,
Yeah.
right? How long did you do that?
Oh, I did it for about 3 years, I think, and then I wasn't well, and so I had to stop it. But I still try to be close to the school, and I go there and give talks about other countries that I've traveled to, and I like to go on Memorial Day or on Veterans Day. Is that what we call it? I've given them little flags and everything to remind them how important it is to have veterans.
Yes.
And then I've also talked to them about some of the countries I've been to, and it's quite amusing. Some of them come up and say, "Mrs. Beebe, I am going to travel like you do."
Oh, well, you expand their vision
Yes, yeah, they.
for what they might do. Yeah.
So it's been very good. I've been to other schools too. I have taught at South and West Salem and McKay and McNary to talk about growing up in World War II. It gives them an idea what it was like to grow up at that time, because we did our work in the air raid shelters, and that wasn't comfortable, and we only went to school for a couple of days a week, just for a few hours, just to pick up our work, and then we had to go home and do it. And of course, the big question is, how did you ever learn anything? Well, we had to learn something, and strangely, most of our class passed their school evening examination.
You were self-educated.
Yes.
With teachers guiding you, right?
Yes. We'd go there and sit in the air raid shelter for a while, but it wasn't comfortable.
It's hard for kids to comprehend that. And now your volunteering began after your retirement from the Breezewood.
Yes.
Can you tell us about the Breezewood?
Well, we already had a restaurant out at the Salem airport, which the restaurant inside belonged to us, but the building was the city of Salem, so they were our landlords, and we decided we wanted a bigger place and where we could have banquets and do weddings and things like that. So we bought property out here on River Road that had been empty for as long as I'd been here, and built the building there, and built a two-story restaurant with a big banquet hall downstairs, and upstairs had 2 dining rooms and then a bar. And we had a little difficulty getting a license for it, but after the 3rd try,
You got your liquor license?
Liquor license, yes.
Okay.
And it worked very well. It was interesting.
What was the business climate like in Kaiser at that time?
Well, I don't know.
Were you chamber members of the Chamber of Commerce? Did you?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so. Probably didn't have time, because when you own a restaurant, you have to know how to do everything, from sweeping the floors and cleaning the restrooms to cooking and greeting people. And you never know. We once had a cook that called in and said, I can't come to work today because I can't come to work this morning because I'm in Las Vegas.
Oh, no.
Like he didn't.
No notice at all.
So it means that you have to fill in on the job. So I think I did some work with at the Capitol building in later years, and then I did opening nights for the Pentacle Theatre, and
You catered?
from the restaurant, and what else?
How many years did you have the Breezewood?
From 72 to 87.
Well, that kept you busy, didn't it? And you were raising children at the same time.
Well, yeah, they were. Actually, our children worked for us. So.
Okay. That's a good way to keep an eye on them, right? And then after you retired, in addition to volunteering at Cummings School, you volunteered at the state capitol and also at Mahonia Hall, right? Can you tell us about that?
Well, I worked when the government was in session. I worked in the Senate to guide people, to find out what their requests were, to stop them from interfering if someone was talking, and all that kind of thing. And then when the earthquake was over in Woodburn, the Capitol was, they determined that the Capitol was not in good shape, and the dome had to be worked on. So they closed off, as you walked into the Capitol, you walked into a little cubicle made of plywood.
Oh.
And then you had to turn, and then so that they didn't go under the dome area. And so we had to lead people around to where they could go. So
Traffic
I did, yes,
control.
And then I was asked to work with the in the gift shop. But my brother was visiting, and this was 1995. My brother was visiting, and we went to Smith Rock, and that's in Eastern Oregon, yeah. And I fell and broke my ankle.
Oh, dear.
And so I had to quit because there was no way I could stand there. And I had a wheelchair and then a cane and all that. But I healed up okay, everything.
You're still using your feet. Now, was that before or during or your time at Mahonia Hall? You were guiding tours there, is that right?
Yes. And I was interested very much in old furniture and old houses and the early history of Salem. And so I did a lot of research to find out more about who built it and why and when and where some of the furniture came from. And I made a sort of guidebook because those were the questions that people asked when they came there. But then they changed things, and they no longer took the volunteers. It was all, I think, a group of ladies, a lady lawyers association that took over doing it.
Okay.
So I could be wrong. Wouldn't be the first time.
Well, yeah. But you put together a notebook with all the background, and you wrote a lot of letters, didn't you? And following up on things. You're a researcher.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's good to be able to have an intelligent answer, because of course people touring are going to want to know about the furnishings. So good, kudos to you for doing that.
Yeah, I was disappointed, in fact, when somebody suggested that they sell it because the government didn't have enough money. And I wrote a letter to the paper about it because, it wasn't given to the state exactly. It was financed by a group of people who wanted a proper place for the governor. And the thing was, it said that if the governor no longer used it, then they would be sold and the people would get their money back. It was not.
Oh, it was in trust.
Yes.
To be used that way.
Yeah, I don't know how to express it, but that's basically what it is. And so
It's still being used, though.
yeah, well, that's what happened. I think it's being used now, isn't it? I don't think that Kitts Harbour used it, did he?
And Governor Brown is using it.
Yeah.
Well, now you are involved in the political process somewhat, or you have been, in regards to your neighborhood. Tell us about the alley.
Oh, well, that was pretty much a personal thing, because there's always been an alley. In fact, there wasn't any houses behind us when we first moved in. And I have just about half an acre, and we had a definite alley that went up the street. Well, the rules changed, and the corner house on 5th and Sunset was inherited by the person. The person died, and the daughter inherited it. And they decided that in the back part of the lot, which was totally on 5th, they would build 2 houses. Well, when they built 2 houses, they planned on closing the alley. And all of us used it, and we all got together. I called a meeting and said that, we definitely used it. I mean, I had that That was my husband's workshop back there. See, that's it. And others have places that they used. And we went to court about it, and this man was very unhappy because he couldn't have his house going across the alley. But eventually we won because it went clear to the Supreme Court.
Because there were many people using that alley as a public access, right?
Yes.
And the traffic has changed on Sunset also, hasn't it, over the years?
Oh,
And
yes.
the issue of sidewalks has gone back and forth. What is your take on that?
Well, it would be nice to have sidewalks. It's, if you're walking up and down the street, even though they have that white line there now, you still have to sort of step into somebody's property to when the cars go by. And I swear, you know, it's 25 miles an hour on this road, but I swear some of them go 50. And there's lots more traffic.
Well, they
than there used to
widened
be.
it, didn't they? Yeah.
They widened it a little, yes, but it's still not the best thing, at least for somebody my age, to be walking in it. We do have a lot of bicycle.
Skateboards.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
A lot of young people, in fact, I worry. Also, we have about half a dozen deer.
Oh, you have deer in your neighborhood?
Yes.
Oh.
Am I getting too far off?
No.
Well,
I want to hear about your deer.
We have deer. Well, the first year there was just 2, and they had a couple of babies, and then the next year there was more, and I think they've been here now for about 6 years, and they live in a house that has a lot of trees up there. But they go up and down the road, and now they are getting very brave. They used to always walk in people's gardens. They'll jump your gate. I mean, I've got a wire fence across the back. They just jump right over it.
Interesting within the city to have the deer, isn't it?
Yes, and but now they're getting very brave and they play in the street. And
Oh, that's dangerous.
it is, yes. And a lot of people say, well, we just don't know what to do about them, you know. I mean, okay, they're cute, but some of them are getting pretty big. And
they eat people's gardens, and they
Oh,
can be
yes,
kind of pesky, but
yes,
they
do eat a lot of stuff.
Well, Joy, what did I forget to ask you about?
I don't know. I've been talking too long.
It's been such a pleasure having this time with you, and I just wonder, do you have any words of advice to young families that might be considering raising their kids here in Kaiser?
Oh, I think it's a very good area to raise kids, and we have 2 or 3 parks in the area off of Rivercrest, and then of course there's the new what do they call it?
Kaiser Rapids?
Yes. So we do have places for them to play. We have good schools. It's a little difficult for someone living on this street. Some reason the lady next door moved because her children went to the middle school the new middle school over there, but they couldn't take the bus. They were supposed to walk, and she moved because she said she didn't want them crossing River Road every day. So there are little things like that crop up and are.
River Road has changed a lot in the 59 years that you've been here,
Oh, yes,
hasn't
yes,
it?
A great deal.
Yes. Well, thank you for opening your home to us and for sharing from your life. We really appreciate it. This has been an interview with Joy A. Beebe, War Bride, part of the Kaiser Oral History Project, and thank you so much for watching.